There is nothing left. Any direction you walk, all you find is more destruction.
Thousands of angry Somalis and heavily armed gunmen were locked in an intense battle with the Americans.
We were caught in an ambush with his troops along the frontier.
Get in!
So it was a policy of total annihilation.
Do you think they will attack you before you attack them?
How many shipwrecks do you think are down there?
You've been described as the greatest American rock band. Is that how you feel?
Are you among the last people on Earth to speak this language?
And if you look at the US, what are you most worried about here?
This is traditional Yakuza turf. They run everything here, from the girls to the sex to the drugs.
Do you care if the species goes extinct? Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, I do.
Why do you want to kill them?
Derek and Beverly took us deep into the Delta to see the lions. What is it like to be charged by a lion?
Is that what a mother chimp would do?
No.
Only Mama Jane.
Coney rules by fear and claims he has mystical powers, a formidable combination in the minds of the children he kidnaps.
You were part of an army that taught children to kill, where young girls were raped.
All these people were doing atrocities. Do it under constant instruction.
Including you.
Yes.
The most obvious thing when you look at these walls is that it's all men up there as the past directors. And you went from 0 to prime minister from in about 8 years. So were you high? Were you using it?
Oh, yeah, I was.
And that's why you fell?
I was.
But the bed would be right there in the middle.
Yeah. And you'd all sleep in one bed?
We'd all sleep in one bed.
Happy memories?
The best.
What happened to a lot of the other kids that were on the streets with you?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of my friends are either dead or in jail.
What kind of soldier are you?
I'm average. I'm mediocre.
This is the single greatest honor that the military can bestow on its own. And it comes right from the President of the United States himself. That's pretty good for a mediocre soldier.
Think how good the great soldiers are.
has earned her a prominent place among the world's best foreign correspondents. In her role at 60 Minutes, Logan helped us understand the political and human conflicts around the world, including Pakistan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Israel, and Palestine. Always committed to the story, she lived in Iraq for 5 years at the height of the violence. She was one of the few journalists in Baghdad when the United States military entered the city, reporting live in the square as the statue of Saddam fell. Logan has earned almost every journalistic and reporting award, among them the highly prestigious DuPont Columbia University Silver Baton, the Overseas Press Club, the Emmy, and the Edward R. Murrow Award, to name a few. Her fearless determination to get to the story from its vortex, no matter how dangerous, has often put Logan herself in great danger. In Tahrir Square in Egypt, she came close to death when she was sexually assaulted by a mob while reporting for 60 Minutes on the Arab Spring. A journalist who heads straight into hostile places not for spectacle, but for the sake of our understanding of the real issues of our time, Logan is an insightful interpreter of the international current events and a fearless interviewer asking tough questions of today's most powerful people. Today, she has a successful, long-form, investigative TV series that takes on significant topics with an open mind and an open heart, the way journalism is supposed to be done. It's called Lara Logan Has No Agenda and is broadcast on Fox Nation. The series has taken her deep into subjects like immigration and the southwestern border, socialism, media, and veterans, and so on. You will often see Lara on various news programs and primetime Fox shows, where she's a sought-after voice to comment on topics ranging from national security to terrorism, journalism, and foreign affairs. Originally from South Africa, but now a Texan, South Texans Property Rights Association is honored to hear tonight from Lara Logan.
We see this, but we don't ever see where they'd go.
We don't know what they've been through just to get here. You could see it on their faces. The faces say it 1,000 times.
I know. What's one of the things that people believe about what's going on down here that's just not true?
They portray us as villains. That's not the case, and we all have families. We're here to protect our borders, protect our country. They don't see what reality is.
These guys are runners. They're not going to give themselves up.
It's hard to keep track. It's all happening pretty fast. But I guess this is what you're used to.
We're enforcing the law.
U.S. soldiers have gone to Mexico and helped to train the cartels?
Absolutely. What is happening in Mexico with these cartels, it's not just affecting our own country, they're affecting the world.
This is 24/7, 365. Cartels never shut down here. Right now, we are being watched.
You okay? Okay? It's okay. After 3 decades, is there anything that still surprises you? If you don't know the truth, how are you going to deal with the problem appropriately? So thank you very much, everybody. Eric, thank you for that introduction. Welcome to everybody. It's a shame that I didn't get to fly down to South Texas and be with everybody in person. I know this is, this is an important event, and I wanted to be there, and I wanted to do it for Susan and for all the ranch owners who helped and advised me and guided me when I was starting my work on the border episode. You just saw a promo for what was really 90 minutes of television, and I really learned a lot from talking to Catherine Armstrong and Susan and a number of other people who helped me, and I am very grateful for that. And I do kind of like being a Texan. I realized when I hit outlaw country that I'd found my home away from home. I'm just lucky that my husband grew up here, was born and raised here. In fact, this house where we are right now is where his family have been for more than 100 years. They were one of the founding families of Texas. And for those of you who know this state really well, I guess you know that the state tree in Texas is a pecan tree, but what kind of pecan? It's the Burkett pecan, which is, my husband is Joseph Washington Burkett, the fourth. And it was his great-great-grandfather who planted that pecan on his ranch. I think Burkett is in South Texas, and I heard that you never want to go there. That it's one of those places that is literally just miserable and small. And okay, so that's by way of introduction. I actually have been really looking forward to having this opportunity to talk to you, because right now I'm working on Return to the Border, which is for the new season of my show. I am going back to the subject of the border, which is really a testimony to how fascinated people are with this issue all across the U.S. Painting this as just a border issue or a border town issue is incredibly dishonest, because the first episode on the border was huge. It got such a big response. It's been the most successful show on the Fox Nation platform, and I did every show that there is on Fox News's platform that we could fit into the time that we had allotted to promote the series. And that to me is a measure of how significant the issues are that all of you know firsthand. I mean, far better than most people in the country. And also speaks to so much that is, I would say, amiss would be a good word, right, at this moment in U.S. history. Because I don't believe this country is very divided. I don't believe it's racially divided. I don't believe it's politically divided. I think my experience has been that whether you're talking to locals in the Rio Grande Valley or you're talking to people in Boise, Idaho, really the whole issue of the border and immigration is a big one. It affects everybody, whether you know it or not, some of us more directly than others, but ultimately it affects all of us. And I think what I learned when confronted with the border issue, so my process as a journalist has never changed. I always say that I don't know why people bother to go to Columbia Journalism School, because the only qualification you really need is to be truly nosy about everything. And then my preference is that you actually have some integrity that goes along with that and some determination. But that's not an impediment to success for everyone in the journalistic realm, as you probably have noticed. But I say this because it's really important to me that people understand that journalists don't typically make up narratives like we're so divided, we're in a race crisis. People, political people, make up those narratives and plant them within the media. And there are a lot of factors that come into play here. Most journalists share the same ideological ground or the same worldview, if you like. Most journalists are very liberal and to the left, right? Or left of center, or like many Americans, moderate. The number of journalists that are on the right is small, and especially when you look at the legacy media, because people will already be jumping up and down and saying, oh, look at, what about talk radio and Rush Limbaugh and this and that and all the rest of it. I didn't say there were no journalists who were conservative, but if you look at the world that we've created, it revolves entirely around the mainstream legacy media and all of the people who share that worldview. So you could be Politico or Huffington Post or anyone like that. And as long as you buy into the same set of narratives and the same view of the world, you're okay. And everybody outside of that is in this, is in this space that we've pushed outside outside all the pillars of recognition that we give to everything that's worth something in our society. So, for example, Hollywood doesn't award Oscars to Christian films, do they? That's not going to happen. And you don't get the Pulitzer Prize if you're at Fox News. That's not going to happen either. So really all these, our society revolves around a media world and a political world that shares this one ideological ground. And that impacts how we cover immigration and the border. Obviously, right? You're all familiar with that. I don't need to be telling you that. That's not news to you. So, so what do you do about that? Well, as a journalist, what I found, and the reason I think that the show in part was so successful, is that you can spin, you can lie, you can hide, you can, you know, cover things up and deceive people and distort and mislead, and you can do all of those things. You can have wildly different feelings about something, perceptions of something, opinions on something. But the only thing that none of us control, that you can never change, is the truth. And quite a well-known Democrat politician leader said to me once when we had this conversation, he said, oh, you know, that's really not true because it depends on where you grew up and the color of your skin and where's your family wealthy. And I was like, no, that affects how you feel about the truth. That affects how you perceive it and what you want done about it and, you know, your response to it. But it doesn't actually change the truth. And that's a very helpful thing, I think, for all of us, but especially for journalists and especially for young journalists today who, in fairness to them, are not really being trained to be critical thinkers and to be real journalists. They're being trained to be activists and political operatives. They're coming out of colleges thinking that that's what they're meant to do. And I wasn't born knowing how to be a really skeptical, critical journalist. I was born nosy, but I learned not to take things at face value. I learned not to trust people that I like so much that I don't do my job, and only put the people I don't agree with under scrutiny, right? I learned those lessons, and many of them I learned from journalists who had come before me. So I sort of feel now this is, in part, it's still what I do every single day, because I got a lot left in me. But it's also the thing that if I'm going to leave anything behind that matters, I'm leading by example to show what real journalism is supposed to look like when you approach it the right way. I'm not saying that everything I do is perfect, but I'm saying if you're approaching it with those principles in mind, that I don't work for, I happen to be on Fox Nation's platform, and there'll be people out there who say, oh my gosh, how ridiculous, saying you have no agenda when you're on the right-wing agenda-driven network, blah, 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 right? I mean, that's just nonsense. It's only because, as you all know, New York Times isn't really interested in what's happening, what's really happening on the border, or how, you know, any of you, for example, ranchers out there, right? How do you feel about it? They don't care how you feel about it, because the narrative that has been created when it comes to the southern border and to immigration is one where the humanitarian issue dominates and defines everything. We only look at the southern border. We're not allowed to look at it through a national security lens. If we do that, we're racist, or we're xenophobic, or we're, you know, evil in some way, just full of everything bad you can think about it. Actually, go back to Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables, right? Because that really does fit into, that was a defining moment. It wasn't just a slip up on the campaign trail. It was an orchestrated, planned, and deliberate moment where they laid out the ideological ground that anyone who doesn't agree with them would now belong in. That's your, so whether you're racist or not, whether you're prejudiced or not, whether you're xenophobic or not, is of no consequence, because that is now your place, and you have to wear the shackles of every other person that's in that space. And we all carry the same weight and burden. There can be no distinctions. If you're Christian, you're bad. If you're pro-life, you're bad, right? If you believe that, you know, there's only two genders, you're evil. In fact, if you apparently say sexual preference these days, you're now evil. So that's very instructive when it comes to looking at how we understand and how we approach the southern border and the whole issue of immigration. Because to take it back to what I said to you about journalists don't make up these narratives. They don't. There are political operatives
within the journalistic world that are, there because they have placement and access, and they engineer things from the ground up. There is also that sympathetic ideological ground that I mentioned, where most of us kind of agree with each other, right? And then on top of that, there is what's called information dominance. And creating that space where our entire society, from the Nobel Prize to the Oscars, whether it's science or Hollywood or magazines or media, or civil rights, social justice, animal rights, climate, you name it, it all revolves around this one space of one worldview where they have information dominance. Because it doesn't matter what Breitbart does. It doesn't matter that they do the Cartel Chronicles and that they're covering this consistently and really well. They've actually made the border a beat, and they're doing incredible work. And it doesn't matter, because they've deprived anyone outside of this space is deprived of legitimacy. Now, you're not really deprived of legitimacy, because millions and millions of people in this country and all over the world secretly go to those sites. They don't want to admit it, because if you're shut, this is the party, right? This is the Super Bowl. And if you're not in it, you're not at the Super Bowl. And everyone wants to be at the Super Bowl. And very few people have the moral courage to be outside the Super Bowl. I mean, they'll do it on the down low, but then what are they really willing to pay for that? So that's the space in which I walk into the southern border and find one of the most underreported stories of my entire career. It's incredible to me that you can have a story of that significance, that's that accessible, right? Compare going down to McAllen or Laredo or even across the border into Mexico to a constant rotation in Iraq or Afghanistan year after year after year, and literally tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that were spent by news organizations covering those regions. So that's in a way a gift as a reporter, because almost anything I did, I sounded smart because nobody knew anything. I mean, really. And amazingly, people love to learn. Everybody loves to learn. We like to be entertained, we like to laugh, but what do we remember if we watch 60 Minutes or we watch something else, right? We're most impressed when we learn something we didn't know. And so the southern border was such an opportunity for me in that sense, because I learned so much. And as I learned, I was able to share that with our audience, and it was extremely well received because people do care, and because you can't change the truth. You just can't. You can't turn a guy like that one in the promo. You can't make him a monster when he's not. You can try, and you can get away with it for a while, but not forever. So when AOC says that Border Patrol is running concentration camps, really? Wow. They've gotten away with that one for far too long, right? Because it's so dishonest that it shouldn't have even stood for half a second. But it's just not true. It's not because I'm conservative or Democrat or whatever. It's nothing to do with politics. So my curse and my saving grace is that I'm just not politically defined. I mean, I wasn't kidding about outlaw country, right? I mean, I'm a bit of an outlaw. I'm comfortable being an outlaw. Why? Because I know who I am. And I think that's something that Texas as a place and as a culture, we don't always know all the time. Of course, we have our moments of doubt and insecurity and everything. But essentially, we have our own, this is a place of people who have a real certainty in their identity. They know who they are and what they believe in. Not every single person, but you know them. Susan, you know them, right? Yeah. And that's something nobody can take from you. So that's been a very powerful thing for me. It's led me to outlaw country, but it's ground that I believe in. So I'm okay with that. And I don't know how many of you have had a chance to see the first episode or any part of it, so I don't want to bore anyone by rehashing too much of it. And I actually really want to take you into the world that I'm in right now of return to the border, because it's moved on even in the time since I reported it. But essentially the basis of the entire episode of 90 Minutes was the transformation of the Mexican cartels. Because it's just astonishing to me that something that significant and profound and also threatening has been ignored, literally ignored. And that's not hyperbole, it's not an exaggeration. I mean, it has been ignored. So for a few, for many years now, Jason Jones, who was a former captain in the Texas Department of Public Safety, Texas DPS, Jason Jones is an extraordinary man and a very devoted Texan. But I mean, and he is not a Texas Ranger, but he was actually asked to run the Cross-Border Operations Center, which is a Texas Ranger operation. So, that's a mark of how well respected he is. He also worked in counterterrorism and, a number of other things. Jason quit and dedicated his entire life to getting people in this country and in law enforcement to face the reality of the cartels and this transformation, and documented it along the way. Derek Maltz is a very senior, now retired person at DEA who has done a similar thing from his perspective. And it's just incredible that we are still so blind when it comes to this issue, because it's right there in front of everybody's eyes. This isn't something like you have to wait for, years for the intelligence to be declassified in order to get to the truth. This is something that's right in front of your eyes. And we're talking about, people still think of the cartels as the 70s when they were bringing marijuana across and, through Roma and that kind of thing. It's growing in the fields in Mexico, and here we've got some homegrown, Mexican weed coming over the border. No, it's the cartels today control more than 90% of the global trade in all narcotics. All narcotics. So if you think about that for a moment, what it really means, it means that if you're in Mongolia, or you're in Timbuktu in East Africa, in Mali, or you're in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, or you're in Moscow, or you're in Sydney, Australia, or by the way, you're in Johannesburg, South Africa, and you're buying cocaine, or you're buying meth, or you're buying, fentanyl, you're buying it from the Mexican cartels. The collapse of Pablo Escobar and the Colombians was a really significant moment, because what it essentially did was pave the way for the Colombian cartels to produce cocaine for the Mexicans. It shifted the balance of power in that relationship. And what does Mexico have? Geographically, it has the border. It has that terrain. Probably the most valuable terrain on the face of the earth. I mean, if you wonder why Mexico is so violent, it's because these people, these cartels, are fighting each other day in and day out for every single inch of that physical ground, because it's the gateway to the United States, but it's also the gateway to these massive criminal organizations that the cartels have become, where they, if you think about as you travel further from the source, the price of narcotics goes up, right? So you've got, Navy P-3 planes and all the rest of it at Marine and Border Operations that are going out from Corpus Christi and down there on the Brownsville and all of that. And they're flying long distance. They're going to Panama and all these places. So where the cocaine is being produced, or the heroin, it's coming by sea, and then it's in its pure form. When it hits land, so, as it's getting towards the Gulf Coast, I mean, there's different countries, Panama and places like that, it's starting to be cut down, right? And by the time it gets to the U.S., and then, across the southern border, and then dispersed even more. So every time the purity of it is going down, and the price is going up, and the further you get from the source. So by the time you get to Sydney, Australia, and New Zealand, I mean, we are talking a bag of, I'm going to get this all wrong, and all my DEA contacts are going to be just shaking their heads. But I mean, basically, something that costs $30,000 and, you know, that's worth $30,000 in the US, by the time you get it to Australia, it's worth $200,000, right? I mean, these are massive amounts of money, which is why Cartel Jalisco New Generation, CJNG, is so active in Australia and in New Zealand, because they make so much money. So would you be shocked if I told you how many countries does the Sinaloa cartel operate in today? How many countries? Where are they active? Where do they have operations? Because they still dominate the narcotics trade in the U.S., Sinaloa, one of the oldest and one of the biggest, but still the most dominant. Well, 50, more than 50, I've heard 52, 53, 54, depends on the day. More than 50 countries around the world. Cartel Jalisco New Generation, very close to that. New cartel, but ultra, 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 ultra violent. Taking violence to a whole new level. And I do torture myself and make myself watch these videos and things because I'm trying to understand. And I was obsessed with this for the first year, trying to reconcile the many aspects of Mexico that I know you probably love as much as I do, because the people are fantastic. The culture is fabulous, and it's vibrant and lively, and you know, the art is beautiful, and Mexico City is just gorgeous, and it's so sophisticated in so many ways, and it's so warm, and I love it. I love Mexico, and I love Mexican people, and I love the history. So how can you reconcile all of that with this extreme violence where, I mean, I'm talking about, I was riding back from a small town in Mexico late one night with a bunch of people on this shoot, and one of the Mexican investigators and I were talking, and it had been a long day and it had been a hard day. And, you know, by the end of the day, I've worn them all down. They're too tired to hide what they really think at this point. So, and I was trying to understand the violence from a Mexican point of view, particularly someone like him who had been investigating it for a long time and had really granular knowledge. And I wanted to know, because I had this video that was very hard to watch, with a man who was a money launderer. No, he was a money exchange guy, and he had not been paying his piso, as they call it, although I argue with all my law enforcement friends, and I say, I don't know why you call it a piso, because it's not a tax. Like, Americans, when they hear tax, they understand that this is something, you know, unfortunate but noble, right? That it's a sacrifice you make because you're getting something back. It's a two-way street, a tax. Citizens pay taxes so that their streets can be clean and that their government can run and that their country, right? This is part of our civic duty. That is not the piso. I mean, it is an extortion. It's theft. I mean, it's corruption and theft and bribery on a prolific scale. And if you don't pay it, you end up like this guy, right? Who was, they kept him alive. You know, one of the things they do is keep people alive with heroin, stop them from going into shock. And then they've perfected the art of removing certain limbs and body parts that don't kill you, so that they can keep you alive and make you watch and live through it, and they film it and, you know, and put it out there. And they want you to experience the most extreme form of fear you can ever experience, right? Terror. That's really what it's based on, because fear is such a powerful controller. And that goes back to that ground that they're fighting over, right? That every inch of it, literally every inch of it. So if you look at the violence, yes, ordinary people in Mexico are subject to it every single day, but who's it really directed at? It's cartels against other cartels. It's bosses within a cartel against their own people, right? I mean, that's what it's about. Some guy will kill not his boss, but the guy above him, because then his boss goes up and he goes up, and the boss now owes him. I mean, it's all about this, right? It's all about control. And they use fear and money, power to control it. So I asked this investigator, you know, how long can you keep someone alive like that. I'm just curious, because they start with the feet, and then it's the legs, and then they disembowel them, and then it's the arms. And he thought about it for a while, and he said, you know, I think the longest I've seen is a week. A head with a torso, a week. A week. And now they've gone to another step of, they've got this young kid, he's about 14 or 15, in one of the latest videos I saw, where they actually do this, but they keep him alive, but they remove his heart, and they eat his heart in front of him, and they whoop, you know, I would say like animals, but some people would say that'd be unfed animals. And then where was I? Just in Sonora, and they just burned a guy alive there. And you know, it's not just the violence, right? It's that when you're watching the video, they're laughing and joking and talking. Well, this guy is, I don't know if you've ever watched someone burned to death, but I have, and it takes a long time, and it's very painful. And so, I mean, the guy screams and writhes in pain. I mean, not constantly, because he's on fire, but every few seconds. And, you know, and you see him. And the thing about people who are burned alive is that their bodies are always captured in that moment of death. Whatever they experienced at that exact moment when they left this world, it's captured right there. I saw it in the townships in South Africa. I saw it across the Middle East. I saw it on the airport road. I've seen it in a lot of different places. I never forgot it the first time I saw it, because it's really quite extraordinary. And so why would you live like that? Why would you live with that? What is it that makes people like that? And, you know, it's sadly not that complicated. It's really about the same things that have motivated people from the beginning of time, which is disappointing in a way, but it's also kind of reassuring. And I'll tell you why I say that. It's disappointing because you wonder if you can ever, you can never erase it, because it's part of who we are as human beings. But we like to say it's inhuman, but it's not inhuman. It's very human. Humans kill. An old Catholic priest said to me once, people kill like dogs swim. Throw any dog in water and they can swim. They don't all survive. Sometimes they can't get out or whatever, but dogs can figure it out, right? And so that's really the situation that you have here, is that this is a very human thing. And when the stakes are so high, as they are in Mexico today, when there's so much money and so much power that's connected to this, and then you throw in, you know, mind-altering narcotics, then you really change the game. And Mexico long ago ceased to be an independent state. I mean, as one DA agent said to me in the series, if you took the illicit economy out of Mexico, the entire country would collapse. That's your answer. So I don't have to argue with anyone about, you know, who's corrupt in the government and who's not, and are there good people trying to do good things? Of course there are, right? But it doesn't matter, because in the end, the thing that really matters is that if the economy is that intertwined, that's a metaphor for every aspect of the cartels and Mexico today. So, okay, now you understand that. And I won't take you through the entire trajectory, but it is important to point out that narcotics is only one thing the cartels do today. They also do everyone knows about the people smuggling, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide. But then there's also huachicaleo, which is the theft of oil, right? Pemex obviously is dirty, but I mean, the theft of oil is industrial scale. They're making so much money out of the oil. Avocados have been taken over now. There was a period last year when Michoacan was the most violent place in all of Mexico. And it's moving from avocados, by the way. Tequila is still untouched, but for how long? And every other industry. So what that really means is that the reality is the Mexican cartels are better armed, better funded, with every form of encrypted communication, every technological advantage you can imagine. I really smile to myself when I see all the things about defund the police, and I read the articles as they're written from a New York perspective and that kind of thing, because I think about the sheriff's deputy in Falfurrias, who's only on duty one deputy at a time, right? I mean, if Sheriff Benny Martinez wasn't so committed and dedicated, and, you know, literally you got one deputy who is earning, what, $1,500 a month if he's lucky? And in 10 years may advance $10,000 annually at the end of 10 years. And the nearest hospital is 45 minutes away. I mean, you guys all know this. You don't need me to tell you this kind of stuff. But think about that. And like in McAllen, I did a story with the local police department there, San Juan Police Department. Their police station was built with their percentage of cartel proceeds from operations. Their weapons were paid for by the cartel. Their radios, their uniforms. How many police stations are there like that across the southern border? And we don't want to admit it, but their encrypted communications are so far beyond what our law enforcement is using. And their operations never shut down, ever, 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 ever. 24/7, it doesn't matter. Same with the girls, you know, that are being trafficked. They don't get a day off from being raped when they're sick or sad or broken or, you know, anything. They never get a day off. I mean, I sat with some of these girls. The worst interview of my entire career, which is now more than 35 years, because I had to sit there with those young girls in Tenancingo in Mexico, where they're trafficked, where you have an entire town, generations of sex traffickers, where kids grow up wanting to be pimps. And I had to know that they were going to walk out of that room and go back and be raped again that night, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. One of the guys on our team had to take one girl to the bathroom, and I watched them walk away, and I said to myself, I would not rule out him bundling that girl into the car and taking off. But I knew I was like, he's not going to do that, because the pimp was there, and we were right outside Tenancingo, and I thought, he's not going to do that because he knows he's going to put everyone else in jeopardy. But I tell you, it was the pain in that young girl's face. She was 22 years old, and she'd been there since she was 13. Raped every day since she was 13. And she's now 22. I mean, there's no words for that, okay? If you add it up over the years, how many times that is. It's a never-ending hell where everything you've ever known and loved has been taken from you. And so anyway, you get the point that the Mexican cartels have transformed into the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. Everybody works for them. As you know, you may be a direct subcontractor, or you may be a few steps removed, but ultimately, the currency of street gangs in every city and every town in America and all over the world is what? It's narcotics. That's their main currency. And the narcotics all lead back to the Mexicans. And what they've done is move into the US, where you don't have to proliferate. You have a cartel member, usually a Mexican-American, who is in charge of running a particular operation. But they're going into small towns like Roanoke, Virginia, and buying up the towns. I mean, entire subdivisions that are all Cartel Jalisco New Generation. And, you know, how do you know? You start to track the murder rates. These little towns are going up, right? And I love when they say, oh, you know, El Paso is one of the safest cities in America. I don't know what they're saying about the border. You know, it's not dangerous. Well, because they're passing through, right? Why would they create a problem for themselves right there? They don't want to do that, because that's going to affect the whole operation. The purpose of the border is to move through it, to get to the rest of the country. And one of the most alarming things, and one of the most underreported things right now, that we are not addressing, is that the scale of narcotics production in Mexico, with the growth and the transformation of these cartels, and this is what is going to be in our new series, is unlike anything this country has ever seen. It's actually unlike anything the world has ever seen. At the beginning of August, DEA had already seized more methamphetamine, double what they seized last year, more than 120 tons of meth at the beginning of August. Since then, they've had 2 busts, one yesterday and one last week, I believe, that were the 2 biggest meth busts in history of this country. Super labs in Mexico are producing, I'm going to screw this up, but I think it's 7 tons of meth in 3 days or 7 pounds? I can't remember. I know that's a huge differential, but you get the idea. They're producing it on an industrial scale. And why does that matter so much? Well, there's 2 reasons. I'm going to deal with one first, and then I know we've got to go to questions. But the one reason is that what we're not talking about is that as these narcotics are being produced to scale, they're also being synthetically altered. So the marijuana that would grow out of the ground, that you would, people would enjoy smoking, whatever, is not the marijuana you're smoking today. The prescription drugs that fueled the opioid crisis are not what's fueling the opioid crisis today. I mean, everyone knows how hard it is to get prescription opioids these days. There's been all these controls that have been put in place. The availability of prescription narcotics opioids has been drastically reduced. So you would expect, if that's the source of America's opioid problem, that addiction rates would have similarly declined, right? At least close to that. Actually, no, they're up. They're the same or they're up in certain places. Why? Because the cartels have all the money that they need to adapt. And they pay very close attention to what is happening in the US. So when they see controls being implemented by the US government, they see opportunity and they fill that void with synthetic opioids that DEA told me, unless you have them under a microscope, they're indistinguishable from the real thing to the naked eye. You cannot even tell. So I'm just about to tomorrow deal with, I'm speaking to a family in Phoenix, Arizona, where a young boy thought he was taking Percocet. And what was he taking? Not Percocet, a synthetic form, which is so much more powerful. And then just to top it off and ensure that as many people in this country are addicted as possible, they lace it with fentanyl, which everyone knows is the most addictive form of narcotic and also synthetic, by the way, right? What is it? I don't know, 100 times more addictive than heroin, etc., right? And that in itself is a massively uncovered story. We're not talking about the fact that opioid deaths are already at 70,000, right? I think for this year or every year. Why are the addiction rates not going down? Well, because the supply is not going down, and not only that, it's going up in strength. But the real part of this that we really are not talking about, remember I said there were 2 facets to this, right? Is the national security aspect of this. We have allowed the humanitarian issue to obscure the national security conversation. And if you literally physically, the situation on the border right now, where the massive amounts of families coming over has dissipated, right? And it's cleared. That's literally what's happened in terms of the issue, is that the humanitarian issue is no longer obscuring the national security issue in the same way. It is politically, and it is in terms of perception and media coverage. But in reality, I can go and stand in McAllen and I'm not going to see what I saw a year ago, right? That's just a fact. So what does that actually lead us to? It actually leads to probably the single most important thing to understand now about what is happening. A few years ago, an Afghan drug lord was arrested by the US. And when they took him into custody, he said, "It's all right, because there's more behind me, and we're taking your country without firing a shot." And that's really the part that we're missing. is that somebody said to me once, well, wow, why would the Mexicans, lace everything with fentanyl if it's killing people? Because I said there's an epidemic of teenagers overdosing in Arizona. No one's covering it because people don't want to talk about this, right? It means that you don't care about the mother and her baby that are drowning in the river. No, it doesn't mean that, actually. It doesn't. You can care about both things. And caring about this doesn't make you a bad person or a white supremacist. So, what does it really mean? It means that the Mexican cartels and the Afghans and whoever their other partners are, and most importantly, their biggest partner of all, the Chinese Communist Party, they view the drug trade and the southern border in terms of their national security strategy, where they are literally lining the cities and towns of this country with drug addicts. And this is not, a small addiction. These are addictions that the synthetic opioids are the ones that permanently destroy and eat away at your body and your brain. You don't come back from them. I was just in the number of homeless camps in San Francisco, in Oakland and in San Francisco itself. I couldn't believe what I saw. I couldn't believe what I experienced. And I couldn't believe the level of dishonesty that we live in a time politically where culturally we don't want to talk about narcotics as a bad thing. You got literally people across Los Angeles going to work every day after microdosing on LSD every morning because you should try it. It brings out your creativity and it changes your perspective. Well, you shouldn't be so uptight, man. What are you, some kind of right-wing conservative Christian redneck from Texas? Chill, man. So I'm not talking about this from an ideological perspective in terms of what I think or believe about narcotics. That's irrelevant. It is irrelevant. I'm not I'm not here to judge anybody. That's not my role. I may have my opinion on it, but that's not my role. My role is to look at it from all directions. That's what I try and do. I look at it from all directions. And what I see is that the Chinese Communist Party has partnered with the cartels and has been supplying the precursor chemicals. Nobody wonders why, fentanyl when it began was a mail order drug, right? That was being mailed from China, a few grains in the mail because it wasn't. Chinese don't care that the Mexicans have taken over. They've given them the precursors and allowed them to take over the fentanyl trade. Because why? Let the Mexicans assume the risk. Let them have their foot soldiers. They don't need to compete because their goals are the same. They are undermining and eating away at the very fabric of U.S. society from within. Imagine if the Chinese Communist Party was putting bombs and killing 70,000 Americans a year. We would all have a very different perspective. We would look at it differently. We would treat it differently. We would respond differently. Now we just look away. We just literally look away. And while we're legalizing marijuana, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, and especially with medical marijuana, I know it's transformed people's lives, right? But who's moved in behind there? The Chinese have moved into that too. And what they're doing with the precursors is, what does China do best? It's scale, right? It's the scale of these precursor chemicals. And they're not also limiting the amounts that they ship because the U.S. has put limits on that and restrictions of what can be, the amounts of these chemicals that can be brought in. Because you can find many of these chemicals anywhere, right? You can find many of them all over the world. But you can't find them on that scale. And other countries can be held to account for this. Chinese Communist Party doesn't care. And they have shut down. It's funny because DA will tell you, well, the Chinese have been very responsive because they've really, they've shut down on, all these illegal operations across China. And I'm like, yeah, because they didn't want the competition. And they're right, yeah, that's right, because it's controlled by the state. They don't want the triads or the Chinese gangs interfering in their business, right? And then they get to show the world, oh, look, we've done this and we've done that. They're very strategic and they're very cunning and they have a very long view, And so why in Falfurrias, on your ranches, when you set up a water station, because you don't want to find dead bodies, contrary to the way it's portrayed, you put instructions in 3 languages. Spanish, obviously, Arabic, and Chinese. Because you already knew. You've known this probably before most of the country woke up to it. Well, they haven't even woken up to it yet. What you know is that it's not just the cartels infiltrating. It's not just people coming for a better life. It's governments like the Chinese that are infiltrating the United States with their spies and with their hackers across the southern border. That's when you're in Roma and you don't see 50 boats coming across at the same time. You see one. Or, like if you're on Jason Jones's site, Tripwires and Triggers, you see a cartel convoy moving a high-value target 80 miles inside the U.S. That can be a cartel family member, or it can be a high-value target, right? Someone that some government or some terrorist organization or whoever it happens to be needs to have in this country, and they need their record of them not to be known. Because in diplomatic language and in the diplomatic world, we know the Chinese have spies in our country. They know we have spies, right? They're in every embassy. And there's a whole code that goes along with us. We even know who the people are in their embassies, what positions are typically occupied by spies, and they know it with us. So why put people over the southern border? Because you want spies that we're not tracking. You want spies that we're not watching. And you're right in the heart of it in South Texas. Right in the heart of it. McAllen is one of the biggest areas. I saw it myself. Boatloads, 22 Chinese people. 22 of them. Why? Because the Chinese are working hand in hand with the cartels because they have the same goal, to undermine and weaken the United States of America. And the worst part is they're working with our own people and we're doing it to ourselves. That's the worst part. And the Chinese today have pretty much taken over the money laundering operations for the cartels. They're laundering money through the Chinese. And think about how strategic and smart the Chinese are for doing that. Because what do you have if you're doing the money? You're mapping out the financial networks. And by the way, what are the Chinese doing today? How are they helping launder this money that they haven't ever done before? Any DEA agent will tell you follow the money, right? But you can't always follow the money today because they're using Chinese cash apps, like the Chinese versions of Venmo and PayPal and all these money apps. And they're going into the casinos and they're laundering money through the casinos that way, through these cash apps, and lots of other ways. And they're doing it right under our noses. And we're not talking about it. And we're not doing anything about it. Because if you say anything about the border, you're xenophobic. Or you're some, nasty right-winger, right? Or you want to throw babies in cages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a real moment. This is a real moment. Because we've just seen recently what the Chinese, what happens in China, whether it's deliberate or not deliberate. We just saw something happen in Wuhan with the virus that changed the entire world like that. And we're not being allowed to go back to the way it was. There can be no return because it's the new normal. We have to live in the new normal. Why do we have to live in the new normal? Why? So, and that in itself has become a partisan question to ask when it's really not. It really isn't. So, this is one of the things that I'm looking at and digging into for this next episode. And one of the things I've learned, I actually thought this was made up. Does anyone remember going into a 7-Eleven a few years ago and seeing stuff at the register, and it says not for human consumption. It can be different things like a potpourri or some kind of, and being told don't touch that. That's got like bad stuff in it that they don't talk about. It's the zombie drugs. I thought that was not even real. I thought it was in some old wives' tales. I think people say, no, it actually is a zombie drug that actually China was infiltrating into the US. And it actually comes from all along the Wuhan River. They were spraying the plants with these deathly, deathly chemicals that they were then taking the plants and chopping them up, fine, and putting them into potpourri and other products. And there's a few cases. Florida man eats off the face of someone else, right? That's this drug. They are literally, it makes you go insane and psychotic. And there's, you can look up zombie drugs and see that came from Wuhan. That came from Wuhan. I mean, it's unbelievable. So when they shut down the Chinese embassy in Houston, what you need to know is that that was literally the hub of spying for China in America. There's a reason they shut that embassy down. And it's not because Donald Trump's an asshole or is trying to distract from whatever, right? Because that's the other thing that they want you to do, is just to focus on everything that you might not like about Donald Trump or everything that you might find offensive. They want everyone, left and right, to focus on that. Because as long as you're focusing on that, you're not focusing on what is really happening in this country today and how we are literally standing by and doing nothing while generations of Americans are either dying or going insane. The levels of mental illness are staggering. I mean, and in those homeless camps, one after another, and I talk to some of the guys who work in those camps and they're there every day, and they will tell you, oh, she's too far gone. Don't talk to her. And this one is not too bad, but the damage is permanent. It doesn't come back. It's literally permanent. And we're not addressing that. We're not addressing the long-term effects. We look only at the short-term effects. We're not addressing the scale and of the proliferation of narcotics. We're not addressing the scale of the corruption that is. You know, Catherine Armstrong said something to me. I think many of you know her. Catherine, if you're watching and listening, hi. But Catherine told me about being in Laredo growing up and going over the border, you know, to shop and to have lunch. And this, the picture that she painted for me of this very vibrant time before Ronald Reagan stepped in with his immigration policy, where people just flowed back and forth over the border. And then how things had changed. And then this idea that we have that you can have that level of corruption and violence on the other side of the border and think that this invisible line that doesn't really exist in many ways is going to hold. That this line is going to hold. It's not going to hold. It's just a question of time. And so Jason Jones's site, Tripwires and Triggers, is about alerting you to the things that he has seen along the way, that as he has documented the transformation of the cartels, not just in scope and scale and power and money, but in tradecraft. What is that? It's military tactics, it's training, it's the weapons that they use. He can tell you when the first bomb was used in Mexico, and tell you what kind of bomb it was, and look how ineffective it was in a sense, and what it did and what it didn't do, to today, where a few weeks ago they're sticking a magnetic IED on someone's vehicle and detonating it whenever they want to, which is the most sophisticated IED technology in the world. I mean, it's not most sophisticated, but certainly at the front end of that technology, right? That's where it is today. And what one cartel does, they all have to do, because they're not going to be outdone by each other. So now you have these enforcement arms that began with the Gulf Cartel that are now across all of the cartels, where they have these super violent armies of enforcers, like Los Antrox for the Sinaloa cartel, who fight at the level of a trained military a lot of the time. And this is why there's a push by some people in this country to have the cartels designated as terrorist organizations, because the law enforcement model that we've been using for half a century isn't prevailing. It's not winning. It's getting worse. And the cartels are more brazen than they've ever been. 98% of murders in Mexico go uninvestigated, never mind unsolved. Not even investigated, 98%. There's mass graves across that country. The morgues are filled with unclaimed bodies. There's, who remembers from Juarez, the pictures of the women on the bridges? How many people do you know? How many Mexican Americans do you know who are still waiting for someone to come home, who isn't coming home? So, but what really concerns me is that this marrying of interests between the Chinese and the Mexican cartels, and how that feeds into the ideology that you see on the streets today, where the same people that will go to McAllen and Laredo and across the border and go to Tijuana and provide free legal services to illegal immigrants and teach them and run campaigns to discredit and target ICE and any law enforcement officer like ACLU. ACLU runs negative ad campaigns, political campaigns against any local sheriff who will enforce an ICE detainer. Anyone, if your policy, if you're running as a DA or a local sheriff or whatever it is in any town in Texas or Arizona or California or New Mexico, and or anywhere actually in the United States, the ACLU is pouring its free legal resources into ensuring that you don't get elected. And they're doing that from the ground up, and they're doing it from the top down at the same time. And they're the same people who are bailing Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioters, violent criminals, out of prison today. They're the same organizations, legal organizations, and they're being funded by the same network of foundations and civil society organizations, social justice organizations. So there's an entire network of them, from the Ford Foundation to the Kellogg Foundation to the Open Society Foundation to Arabella Investments, a dark money firm, to the Tides Foundation. And they don't just create one foundation, they create an umbrella network of organizations. So the Tides Foundation has now taken over management of the Black Lives Matter global network. They'll have a global network, they'll have an American network, they'll have a policy center, they'll have, now BLM has a super PAC, and they're endorsing and paying for candidates. Why? Well, with the help of Bank of America, who gave them $1 billion. $100 million from Nike, Nike Jordan, 40 more million from Nike itself, along with Target, Walmart, you name it. Where are you people? Where are you? Where are you talking to the people that you know that sit on these boards, that run these companies, that own these, land in this country? Because the platform, the very same people who are financing and illegal immigration are the same people that are financing Antifa and BLM. Same people burning American cities down now. And by the way, how do you sustain a riot like Portland for more than 130 days? Cash and narcotics. Everybody's high, and the drugs are free. And when you look at those booking photos, do yourself a favor, go to Andy Ngo's website and look at all, he posts a lot of booking photos of rioters who've been charged. You can see it in their faces. It doesn't take a genius to recognize it. So we literally are creating generations of kids who are being raised to believe that the color of their skin is a crime in itself, that being born white is a crime, that doing any kind of drug is a good thing for you. Narcotics don't motivate people a lot of the time, do they? They don't create mental stability. They don't, even marijuana can trigger psychosis in people, right? And I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm just saying, if you consider for a moment what we know to be widespread effects of things like fentanyl and heroin, more so than things like cocaine, look at what you're doing. Look at what you're endorsing. Because you tell me the name of one Democratic politician who has stood up and said something about this. One. one name. They're taking money from the same people. So does that mean that they're all in full agreement? No. Does it mean that the Green New Deal, that Biden and is representing the Green New Deal in its entirety? No. But the people who funded the Green New Deal are funding Joe Biden. They're the same people. They're the same organizations. And they're also funding illegal immigration. They're providing the legal services. They're providing the alerts on social media that if you see somebody from ICE coming into your neighborhood, you put an alert out. They're sanctuary cities that are putting Americans at risk. And by the way, what rights do illegal people have in sanctuary cities? We don't know, because there's no oversight. So sanctuary cities are not paradise. They may be better than being thrown out of the country, but they're not paradise. Anyway, I know that I've gone over my time, and I'm happy if anybody needs to go and wants to go. I know there's still an auction to do, but if you want, I can still take some questions, and I'll try not to be so long-winded.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Lara, for inviting us into your family's living room and to allow the rest of our organization that didn't have the privilege of being here tonight due to the current health pandemic that we have, the opportunity to hear this very moving and thoughtful discussion about not just what's going on our southern border, but what's going on in our society as in general. I think,
and the southern border is one of the front lines.
It is, and it's not the cause. It's a symptom of overall what's going on in our country right now. I want to talk a little bit about normalization of deviance. I think that goes along with kind of what you were talking about at the end. That we're the rhetoric that is being used creates a culture of fear among people who want to have everyone follow the system of laws, this foundation that our country was built on. How have you experienced this normalization of deviance in your journalistic career?
Well, it's very interesting that you raised that point, because what I realized working with the border is that you can criticize this administration or the last one or whatever, but the reality is, no matter how humane your border policy is, your immigration policy is, at some point, if you believe in having a border, there will be a cutoff. There just has to be. So whether you think that 100,000 illegal immigrants is the good number for us to absorb every year, or whether you think it's 1 million, at 1 million you're going to cut it off, right? And so that's really symbolic